Hey students, this is lesson 311. In this lesson we're going to learn how to deal with percents using some proportions and ratios. And in this particular lesson we're going to just try and learn how to estimate percents or estimate ratios. And what we're going to try and remember is that a percent means out of 100. So it gives us a common way of comparing two things. If we think of each as the percent it represents, the higher the percent, the higher the portion. So what I want to do here is, I'll just do a couple problems with you and just kind of give you an idea. So Washington Middle School has 750 students, Kennedy Middle School has 600. A survey finds that 375 Washington students participate in club activities while 350 Kennedy students participate in club activities. What percent, and we're just estimating here, we're just going to estimate, of Washington students participate in club activities? Well, Washington had 375 out of a total of 750 students. And you kind of have to get to know your numbers, but one way you could do this is round this up to 400, round this up to 800. 400 out of 800 is about 50%. And then what percent of Kennedy students? So Kennedy had 350 out of 600. So we're doing 350 out of 600. Now, when you're doing percents, percent really means out of 100. So if we're just estimating here, to get from 600 to 100, we need to divide by 6. So let's divide this number by 6. And 350 doesn't divide by 6 very easily, but 360 does. And that's not too far away. 360 divided by 6 is 60. So about 60% of Kennedy students participate in club activities. And as he says, do a greater percent of Washington students or a greater percent of Kennedy students. Now it's really easy to compare. We can just look at the numbers. You see that 60% is bigger than 50%, so it's definitely Kennedy students. All right. And then number 2 says, at each school, 500 students play a musical instrument. Which school has a greater percent of students who play a musical instrument? Explain. So in one school, that would be 500 out of 750. That's Washington. So I'll just put Washington, that's Washington. And Kennedy is 500 out of 600. And you could do some computing here if you want, but since 500 out of a smaller total of 600 compared to 500 out of a larger total, we know that this number will be a greater percent because it's a higher ratio. So, and that's Kennedy. All right. Number 3 says at each school, about 70% of the students volunteer in the community. About how many students at Washington volunteer? Let's write down the total at Washington. Total was 750 students. So we need 70% of that. And in the other school, there's 600. We need 70% of that. Now, one thing I like to do when I'm doing percents is I like to think about 10% because 10% is pretty easy. 100% of 750 is 750. 10% is just moving the decimal over 1. So 10% of 750 is just 75. And now I can scale it up to 70% just by multiplying by 7. So I really just need 75 times 7. And that's 75 plus 75 plus 75 plus 75. If you don't like that number, you could round it to 80 if you want, or however you want to do it. But the way I'm thinking of 75 times 2 is 150. And then 150 and 150 makes 300. That's 75 times 4. Add another 150. That's 75 times 6 is 450. And then one more 75 onto there makes 525. 10% of 600 is 60, so that's 10%. So now just multiply that by 7. 6 times 7 is 42, so 60 times 7 is 420. So use that 10% method, that works pretty good. I'm going to skip ahead here, try a couple of these problems. It says 2 neighboring colleges hold an annual blood drive competition the week of a football game. This year, Smithville wanted to collect 1,200 pints of blood. Jonesboro wanted to collect 800 pints. With 1 day left, Smithville University had collected 900 and Jonesboro had collected 750. Suppose each college had reached 30% of its drive goal at the end of the first day. Determine the number of pints collected by Smithville. Again, so Smithville wanted to collect 1,200 and we wanted to know what is 30% of that. Well, again, just underline the first 3, that's 10%. So just multiply that by 3 or add 123 times. So 360 would be 30%. Right? And Jonesboro, 30% of their goal was 800. 30% of that is, again, 10% of 800 is 80. So 30% would be 80 times 3. 8 times 3 is 24, so 80 times 3 is 240. All right, number 7 says, suppose each college had reached 145% of its drive goal by the end of the drive. Estimate the number of pints collected by Smithville. So 145%. Well, their goal was 1,200, and that's 100%. And half of that is the same as 50%, which is 600. Sorry about that. So if I add those two together, I have 150%, which is pretty close to 145%. So we're going to just say about 1,800. We know it's just a little bit less than that. And then Jonesboro. Jonesboro wanted to collect, I believe it was 800. So 100% of 800 is 800. 50% of that would be half of that, which is 400. So 800 and 400 is 1,200. And you can see how we got our estimates there. Let's do, it says, how can you use your calculator to find this ratio? And we want to know what percent it is, and so I'm just going to show you how to change a ratio into percent. So what we're going to do is 550 divided by 800 on our calculator. And that equals 0.6875. Now to change it to a percent, all we have to do is multiply by 100. And what that does is moves the decimal over 2 places. And I think I'll just round it to the next whole number, so about 69%. And that's how you use your calculator to do that. All right, let's do one more problem here. And it says determine which ratio in each pair is greater. Sorry about that again. Or if the ratios are equivalent by finding the percentage represents. So all we're going to do here is 56 divided by 69. And we're going to do 76 divided by 89, see which is greater. Now, if you could just think about it, estimate which is greater to begin with so you kind of get an idea. If you were to round this to 80 over 90, and this maybe to 60 over 70, you see a ratio of 6/7 there and a ratio of 8/9. So I think 8/9 is going to be a higher percent. Then go ahead and use your calculator to do that. So I'm thinking this one is greater, but change each to a percent just to make sure. All right, that's going to be the end of this lesson, and I'll see you in class.